Om Namo Guru Bhanza Dhete Lojana Dharana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhi Pala. So now chapter 2 of Gongchik, this is the vital points on dependent origination. So maybe a little bit, I should say first about dependent origination. Let me see. I've not really intend to do this, but let me look at one thing and see if I can find an efficient way to briefly give the background, right, to this notion of dependent origination. Okay, I think maybe the best place to do actually is to go to Wikipedia. Sometimes there's some really good stuff there, sometimes not so. Trick is being able to tell, you know. So if we go to Wikipedia, you don't need to go if you just want to listen. But if you go to Wikipedia and you look for Pratitya Samutpada, if you search for Pratitya Samutpada, then it will pull up the entry, okay? So Pratitya Samutpada, commonly translated as dependent origination or dependent arising. It's a key doctrine of Buddhist philosophy. I don't like that, you know, Buddhist philosophy. Buddha did not teach philosophy. It's not a set of arguments. Although later Buddhists developed Buddhist philosophy. Anyway, which states that all dharmas, all phenomena arise in dependence upon other dharmas. And the most famous kind of expression of that is, so here in quotes, if this exists, that exists. If this ceases to exist, that also ceases to exist. This is the most simple way of explaining Pratitya Samutpada, dependent origination or dependent arising. Then in more less, you know, academic or translations, you have like interdependent arising, interdependence, interdependence. All those translations that you will see in more popular books on Buddhism, on Buddha's teachings. So in the broadest meaning, it is that all phenomena, everything that exists, everything that we experience, everything that we see, taste, touch, smell, think of, everything, they arise, they come about, they are the way they are because of other dharmas who are in turn, right, also dependent on other dharmas. So suddenly you see this whole web of interdependences. And summarized by, if this exists, then that exists. But if this ceases to exist, then that ceases to exist. Just as remember the joke I told about how a school teacher asked the child, how old is your father? Right? The child says, 9. And teacher said, no, I'm not asking how old you are. I'm asking how old is your father? And the child goes, 9. Teacher is like, your father cannot be 9. You are 9. And then he said, well, my father wasn't my father before I was born, was he? I don't know if there's a child that smart, but so that's like interdependence. We tend to think like, no, Bob existed, before his son, but that's Bob. That's not the father of, Billy. The father of Billy is 9 years old. So this really gives a break, I think, to parents, really. Parents don't need that burden of thinking, oh, I'm 50, or I'm 40, or I'm 30, I'm 20, and I still don't know how to. No, you're only 9 years now that you have been a parent. Even if, well, hopefully your other faculties are more developed than your 9-year-old. But insofar of your role as a father, as a mother, it's as long as the child has been a child, and the son has been the son, the daughter has been a daughter at 9. So dependent origination. The principle is expressed in the links of dependent origination. So now, when the Buddha elaborates on this, so there is a very common set of 12 links, 12 chain of causal chain that has become standardized over time. That again and again in various places when the Buddha taught, he consistently used this 12 links. A linear list of 12 elements from the Buddhist teachings which arise depending on the preceding link. Traditionally, the list is interpreted as describing the conditional arising of rebirth in samsara and the resultant dukkha that we experience in samsara. Here it points out that there is a Theravada interpretation, an alternative interpretation, that regards the list as describing the arising of mental formations and the resultant notion of I and mind, which are then the source of dukkha. So in this entry in Wikipedia, it points out that there are some Theravada interpretations that you could say, in contrast to the more general interpretation. The more general interpretation says all of samsara, this is how it came about. Here is saying that there is an alternative interpretation that you can find in Theravada sources that seems to zoom in more on an individual's experience. I would say both are applicable. That ultimately, yes, I also agree. The Buddha is more focused on talking about insofar as the individual's experience is concerned. And that is more important to look at how these 12 links is the basis of the arisal of suffering within ourselves. Instead of thinking that this is a substitute for like the scientific way of talking about how things came to be. The current modern scientific way of thinking how the way things came to be. But instead to remember that the Buddha was more concerned about the individual's experience. Anyway, traditionally, the reversal of the causal chain is explained as leading to the end of the annihilation of mental formations and rebirth. And so these 12 links go in a linear way. Because of this, therefore this. Because of this, then this. Because of this, then this, until birth and death. The suffering of death. Then the suffering of death leads to a new beginning. again and again. So traditionally, the list also goes backwards and say, well, if you overcome this, then this is overcome. If you take away this, then this also falls apart. If you take away this, then this also missing. So that's the reversal, the opposite direction. So these 12 links can go in this direction to explain how dukkha how we arrive at the experience of dukkha. And then you can also reverse it and say, but when this ceases, this ceases. When this is gone, this is gone. This is gone, this is gone. Then the reversal is then the way to get out of dukkha. So both directions. Scholars have noted inconsistencies in the list and regard it to be later synthesis of several older lists. So yeah, it's good for us to know, although traditionally Buddhist scholars or teachers don't want to talk so much about this, but there are inconsistencies, meaning, different lists did exist in an earlier time until it became stabilized. Like, okay, now by this point, everybody talks about the list as having these 12 members. But early on, there could be some variations. For me, this doesn't take away from the power of this list. And this is also a good lesson for us to understand that whenever the Buddha described and talked about something, he's not, so much focused on talking about exactly how this is happening. He's offering us ways, methods to free ourselves from being stuck from dukkha. Of course, ultimately what he says is based on what is true, what is real. Yeah. So back to the single intention. What he says is based on that single intention, that single understanding of the nature of reality, the nature of mind. But how it is said and to whom it is said, does matter. So what's called inconsistencies to me is just variations depending on who he was talking to. There's more in this entry. Pretty good. One's scanning, taking a scan over this. It's pretty good. So if you want to know more, this entry, I think is pretty good. Okay? So this is the meaning of dependent origination that you should at least know in order to understand the statements in this chapter. Yeah. So let's go back to chapter 2. Or do you have any questions? What we just looked at? Anything that needs clarifying? What we just looked at? My apologies to our Spanish speaking friends. I want to say one thing, you should not be shy to ask. You can even ask in Spanish because there's enough people here to help, translate it for me. And this is my deficiency of not speaking Spanish and hanging out with, Latinos. So it's my fault. It's not your fault if you cannot ask, your question completely in English. So, but we have enough people here, who know enough English and Spanish that we can figure out, what I need to know in order to answer your questions. So please, I know it's not easy, but please don't be shy. We have been meeting as a group for 5 months, 4 months, 5 months, For some of us, we have seen each other more than we have seen anyone else in our life. When this is all over, we should go to Hawaii, I think, for a big party. Bring your pets if you have to. Yeah, so statement 2-3. Yeah. People claim that the mind is the basis and mental events are the particulars. So here is some background. So in Buddhist Abhidharma, again, try to remember, right? Abhidharma is first of all, Abhidharma is a collection of teachings that from a fairly early period, but not during Buddha's lifetime for sure, but from, say, within the first 100 years of Buddhism, Abhidharma became accepted as the third collection of 3 collections of teachings. First collection of teachings is the Vinaya collection. Second collection of teachings are the Sutra collection. And the third collection of teachings are the Abhidharma collection. Even later, among some groups, they have a Dharani collection, which is all the mantras and the incantations, Dharani Pitaka. But generally, all Buddhists accept that the Buddha's teachings are one collection called the Vinaya collection, one collection called the Sutra collection, one collection called the Abhidharma collection. So this collectively, they are known as the Tripitaka. Three. They all have the same root, 3. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Pitaka means like baskets. So they were put in baskets, the 3 baskets. Yeah. So that now, what we know that the third collection, the Abhidharma Pitaka, their style is very different from the Vinaya Pitaka and the Sutra Pitaka. Vinaya Pitaka and Sutra Pitaka almost always, with some exception in the Vinaya section, almost always, these are all records of teachings the Buddha gave, you know. At one time, the Buddha is this place, and then he asked this question, or somebody asked him this question, then he gave this answer, and then they further discussed, and they said this, and they said that, you know. Sutra. Vinaya also like this, but Vinaya is more specific about the rules and regulations of monastic life, which is at the core of the Buddhist community at the beginning. So then again, a lot of stories, you know, one time, you know, a particular monk did this, and then they went and told the Buddha, then Buddha says, oh no, you should not do this. And then later, you know, some other monks, you know, they did this other thing, and then the Buddha, you know. So the Vinaya Pitaka and Sutra Pitaka are very much narrative based. They always come with stories, situation, you know. And to the degree that we get understanding about doctrine, get understandings about logic, get understandings about the way the Buddha will kind of make logical deductions, it's done in a narrative way. But the Abhidharma books are very different from these. The Abhidharma is clearly someone has sat down and using ancient search tools, search for the word, you know, Pratitya Samutpada, and scan through all the Vinaya references to Pratitya Samutpada, all the Sutra references to Pratitya Samutpada, and then put them all in one file, so to say, and then come up with there are 4 types of Pratitya Samutpada. These 4, each of them can be divided. The first one, there are 8 subdivisions. The second one, so the Abhidharma texts are like that. So then clearly we know, well, for sure the Buddha did not sit down and say, okay, now lesson 1 on Pratitya Samuppada, listen, boys and girls. Now look, so he writes on the board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No. But the Abhidharma is like this. Then, so now, when I say the Abhidharma tradition, then I'm referring to those who specialized in further developing this kind of systematic presentation. No surprise, Gilbert Rinpoche doesn't do this. He prefers the narrative. The narrative, you can say, narrative thought rather than systematic thought. He tells stories. He quotes lines and verses. And what he quotes, he doesn't really quote many Abhidharma. Then further in the style of Abhidharma are all the different commentaries written by later figures to either to explain tantras or to explain sutras, or more so to explain Abhidharma. Gilbert Rinpoche's teachings, he doesn't quote them. Probably he didn't read them. I can say that. Because the style is very different. It's often about telling stories. It's often about hard advice. And so anyway, here, but just because, right, he doesn't directly address those issues, it doesn't mean that in his teachings, he has statements that addresses, that does have implications on what the Abhidharma tradition has developed, what the commentaries have developed. So here in this case, this vocabulary of mind and mental events. People claim that mind is the basis and mental events are the particulars. So mind and mental events. Again, now I'm curious. Let's go take a look and see if Wikipedia has mind and mental events. Let's do a search. Oh, wait. I'm searching the wrong place. Mind and mental events. Oops. Hey. Not Wikipedia, which probably is there, but I want to look at Study Buddhism, this website by Primary Minds and the 51 Mental Factors. So Alex Berzin. So here he explains, he says, according to Buddhist definition, mind is mere clarity and awareness and refers to the individual's subjective mental activity of experiencing things. Clarity means giving rise to cognitive appearances of things, similar to mental holograms, and awareness refers to cognitively engaging with them. Mere implies that this occurs without a separate, unaffected monolithic me that is either controlling or observing this activity. So there is no one hiding behind this process. The I exists merely as an imputation based on the continuity of ever-changing moments of experience and ever-changing things. And so then, mind or primary consciousness, there are 6 types. Then there are the 51 mental factors. Mental factors are also merely ways of being aware of something. They are aware of their objects in special ways, but without interpolating or repudiating. This is getting very technical, okay? Mind as the basis. So basically, mental events are considered derivative of mind. And mind is not one thing. So of the two, basically, mind is more primary, less kind of divided, and mental events are more specific. So by the way, the mental events, right, or mental factors, sometimes called that, mental events or mental factors, those in terms of Vajrayana visualization, Vajavarahi wearing a garland of 51 skulls. These are the mental factors. They represent the mental factors. Oh, good. Wikipedia has something. Mental factors under Buddhism. Mental factors in Buddhism are identified with the teachings of the Abhidharma. So now, again, it's Abhidharma ways of listing all these. They are identified as aspects of the mind that apprehend the quality of an object and that have the ability to color the mind, to kind of impress the mind. Within the Abhidharma, the mental factors are categorized as formations, concurrent with mind, occurring together with mind. Alternate translations for mental factors include mental states, mental events, and, oh, this one, concomitants of consciousness. Yuck. Mental factors, mental events. That's good enough. Mental factors are aspects of the mind that apprehend the quality of an object and have the ability to color the mind. Geshe Tasi Sering explains, the Tibetan for mental factors, Semle Jungwa Chu, means phenomena arising from the mind, suggesting that the mental factors are not primary to the mind, but arise within a larger framework. A mental factor, again, is defined as the aspect of the mind that apprehends a particular quality of an object. Because it is characterized by the qualities of activity and non-neutrality, meaning, it will make judgments and choices in ways that primary minds don't make those judgments, okay? Hence, a feeling of desire from seeing what is conceived as a beautiful object affects the other mental factors that are present at that time. So this colors the whole mind. The relationship between the main mind and the mental factors can be described by the following metaphors. So this is useful, yeah? I hope. The main mind is like a screen in a cinema, and the mental factors are like the images projected on the screen. In this analogy, we typically do not notice the screen because we are so caught up in the images. The main mind is like a king who sits passively on the throne, and the mental factors are like the king's busy ministers, the ones who carry out. So most ordinary citizens have never seen the king, may not even know if the king is tall or short, especially before photography and all of that, fat or skinny. If they do know there is a king, it's rare. On a day-to-day basis, they encounter the king's agents. So those are the mental factors. Tralet Rinpoche states that the main distinction between mind and mental factors is that the mind apprehends an object as a whole, whereas mental factors apprehend an object in its particulars. So mental factors is when they zoom in to the redness of the apple, the sweetness of the apple, the tartness of the apple, the mealiness of the apple, the crunchiness of the apple. And mind perhaps only recognizes that there is a red object that is round sitting over there. Very general, these are the distinctions, okay? So here it says, people claim that mind is the basis and mental events are the particulars. So now, it's like, oh yeah, well, this is what we just heard. Again, this is the general understanding. A lot of times the Vajra statements are not contradicting the opposite view, but just saying that's a kind of general view. When you zoom in, there are more profound things that you can see. Yeah. So I don't think we should think that some of the opposing views, so to say, are really like wrong, harmful. But majority of them is just too general. And if it is too general, it could lead to certain misunderstandings. And so he's going to address it. So here he says, mind also arises from mental events. Usually it's mental events arises from mind, almost exclusively in the Abhidharma presentation. Now he's going to contradict the Abhidharma presentation. Yeah. So then Chodra explains, the basis which is without arising is the mind. That which examines it is a mental event. That which removes superimpositions based on the examination is again the mind. Therefore, mind also arises from mental events. The Lankavatara Sutra says, the mind is the basic consciousness. The grasping of mind is the afflicted mind. What grasps the object is called consciousness. The example of this is planting barley as the seed. As the result of the many causes and conditions that have come together, you will again get barley. Furthermore, the basis, which is cognitive misorientation. This is Sobish's translation of what we normally translate as ignorance. Just remember, whenever you see this cognitive misorientation, yeah, I think it's because Sobish really don't like the word ignorance. He feels that it doesn't communicate. I often use confusion. So when you hear me using the word confusion, know that in most other Buddhist writings, it's the word ignorance. And in this book is cognitive misorientation. That means cognitively, you're not, looking at the right thing. So I use the more, I guess, common word, confusion. Confused. Furthermore, the basis, which is confusion, is mind. Depending on mind, secondary mental events arise, which are affective voluntary impulses. Oh my God. Normally, this word is mental formations. This is Sobish's preference. I mean, of course, he has good reason to prefer this. But I just want to give you the equivalents that you're going to find in other Buddhist books. This is called mental formations. One of the 5 skandhas, samskara. This is when the mind starts, associating what it is experiencing with past experiences, with, oh, it's an apple is a fruit. The fruit, fruit is a type of organic matter, all those mental formation, samskara. From samskara again arises consciousness. The Madhyanta Vibhanga says there is the consciousness that sees an object and the mental event that sees the object's particulars. So here, I can say, I've read this statement in the past quite a few times and looked at the commentaries. I have to say that for me right now, I'm not able to really appreciate why this point, why this statement is here. Or what is the deeper significance of this statement? I mean, on the surface, I understand, which is Kyoba Rinpoche is saying, it's not just one direction. It's not that, you should not think, that mental factors or mental events, the more particulars of an experience, is always just the result of mind. But that any of these mental factors, when they are occurring, could in turn give rise to the more basic mind. And that they are much more multi-directional. One can cause the other can cause a further one, so that it's not always just mind to mental factors, mind to mental factors, mind to mental factors. Mind to mental factors in turn can give rise to mind. On the surface, this is what it is saying, and this I understand. But in terms of meditation practice, let's say, what are the implications? I don't quite get. My confession. Now let's look at the notes and see if Sobish provides any insight. He often does, for me at least. Yeah, I like what he's doing. In case you're wondering, so if here and there I kind of pick on him, if you feel that, it's not because I don't like. I really like what he has done. Yeah. According to the Dorshema, removing superimposition. Let's see what that word is. Samaropa. Is the mental process of regarding something that is not actually existing as existing. Okay, good. Yeah. Superimposition or imputation is mind, and the particularity, namely examination and analysis, are mental events. I like this. So Dorshema says, removing superimposition is mind. So that which can take away projections is mind. And the particularity, namely examination and analysis, are mental events. Since the removal of superimpositions through examination and analysis is mind, mind arises in this case from a secondary mental event. Okay, so here it seems that Dorje Sherab wants to show us the positive use of these mental events called examination and analysis. So through examination and analysis, right, it can lead to you removing projections onto things that we constantly do, right? Like projecting qualities of beauty and ugliness into the world. Like projecting qualities of value and non-value. Projecting qualities of, tasty, not tasty. All those are projections. But through examination and analysis, which is the mental events, So in the list of 51 mental events, they divide them further into um, those related to confusion, those related to attachment, those related to aversion. But they're not all negative by any means, like ability to like investigate, to rationalize, is a particular mental event. Ability to love is a particular mental event. Ability of the mind to remain and not keep running is a particular mental event. Yeah. So if you look up the list of the 51 mental events, you'll see this is, things that we often, are words that you will come across in Buddhist writings as things that we should cultivate. Yeah? So just to give you an idea, so then they are also divided in some cases to skillful or unskillful among the list of 51. So skillful is like having confidence or faith. Then the opposite, not having confidence and faith, is also a mental event. That is unskillful. Then doubt is listed often as neutral. A skillful mental event is like self-respect and then lack of self-respect. Skillful is non-attachment. Unskillful is avarice. Skillful is lack of hatred. Unskillful is hatred or rage, resentment, vindictiveness. So the list of 51 covers both skillful and unskillful mental factors. So here, Dorshema's way of explaining this is that it's a primary mind or mind when it has the ability to remove projections. Well, in order to remove projections, it has the ability to recognize projections. But where that comes from is it comes from examination and analysis. And those are mental events. He provides 3 illustrations. The moment of thinking, I must be ordained, is mind. In the moment that follows, having the thought, I must now gather favorable conditions such as the upadaya, the preceptor, and the acharya, the instructor. These 2 persons are the conditions for ordination. So the following thought. The collection of favorable conditions is a secondary mental event, or thinking about the need for. So the first thought, I want to be ordained. He says that is an example of mind. An example of mental events is, to do that, I will need the preceptor, I will need the instructor, and then furthermore, you can say, I need 4 witnesses. All those, he says, mental event. Having achieved ordination based on that is again mind, which is, I have obtained ordination. Or, second scenario, the thought, I must become a disciplined one, is mind. Having thought, I must abandon mental afflictions to lead a disciplined life, and to abandon them is a secondary mental event. And since having abandoned them, one arises as a disciplined one, the former mind is accomplished. Or the thought, I must become a follower of Mahayana. Then having the thought to do this, I must cultivate the resolve for awakening. And when you have done that, and you go, oh, I have now cultivated, that is mind again. Now, to me, this commentary is taking this discussion of mind and mental events to a very particular context. Of defining mind as that which removes negativity, that which removes superimposition, not negativities, but superimpositions. So to me, this is a very narrow use of this division into mind and mental factors. So I think, neither Sobish nor the original, many of the original commentators, exactly know what to do with this statement.
It seems to me like I must be ordained can be a secondary mental factor.
Some would argue that.
Before it.
Yeah, some would argue that. Some would say that's already secondary.
I mean,
the more primary is simply an awareness that you can say of even, well, there's the division into ordained and not ordained.
Yeah, I mean, you keep going back and back and back. And you don't find the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
I think this is a very interesting section, because what it does is it also shows how the mind actually creates, how the mind effectuates and creates the external realities.
Yes. Insofar as this discussion gets us to understand more about the Abhidharma way of talking about, how the world is the way it is. It's the mind and the mental factors interacting. The mind giving rise to mental factors. But here, I think this Vajra statement, I think the real significance of it will come with when training the mind is involved. I feel this is a very subtle point, right? That the commentaries are not able to draw out with words. And then even worse, those of us who don't have the training of the language of the commentary also cannot draw out, the kind of real significance of this statement, I feel. No bother. Yes?
Here, the secondary arising of the mind is like the undoing.
In this case, yes, is saying that it can help undo the superimposition.
Right. Undoing superimposition seems like a good thing. Right? What we want. So I'm curious where the kleshas fit in here. Are they
for that, you have to go first look at the list of 51, and you'll see that there are skillful states of mind in the 51, and there are unskillful. The unskillful are the kleshas. The skillful are not the kleshas. So this 51 is not all negative. These are just classifying. Okay, so step back from even here, right? The list of 51, right, is just an exhaustive list of the Buddhist mental element charts. Like the chemistry elements chart, right? This is the Buddhist mental elements chart, right? Where they chart out, and then they classify into this belongs to confusion, this belongs to attachment, this belongs to aversion. And then they also chart out into this belongs to virtuous, this belongs to non-virtuous, and this belongs to neutral. This is where the previous statement comes. I think these two statements are together because they're related to that issue of, is there neutral actions or not, right? The last statement is like, no, there are no neutral actions. So there's way, way behind. These two statements are related. I'm not able to draw out. Not enough practice yet. And maybe even when you have enough practice, it's hard to verbalize the significance of this statement. Hence, the commentaries don't offer much, or at least offer what I cannot get more out of, other than the surface that I'm able to read and go, okay, 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 and then what?
Guru.
Yes.
Okay, I need to set the basis first. I'm not familiar with the Tibetan Abhidharma, but
about the same. On that level, in this discussion of mind and mental factors, whether Theravada or Tibetan is about the same.
Okay, because to me, this statement kind of carries a candle for me. Because there's actually a school of thought in the Theravada practice where they actually see the mind itself as an ultimate. That means to them, the mind is similar to the soul, which is to say, like normal Theravada will say that when somebody passes away, it's the karma that gets rebirth.
Yes.
But there's this school of thought that says that not just karma, but the mind. So they take mind as something with a sense of permanency. So even in my own practice, when I was following that school of thought formally, I actually come to the point where I feel like, oh, this mind is everything. Because it's because of this mind, I can see the whole world.
Yes, yes.
And the way my mind relates to an external object arises the mental condition.
Yes.
And this mental condition, whether positive or negative, it will collapse depending on the mind. But ultimately, the mind itself is not changing.
Yes.
That is now at where I am, to me, that is the fault right now, seeing that the mind does not change. So to me, when this statement says that the mind is dependent on the mental condition, it actually shows that the mind itself is not permanent.
Okay. I can appreciate this point. Yes.
So to me, it might go off a tangent rather than what
it's hard to know Kyoba Rinpoche's intent, but this is helpful. This at least reminds us, when you keep thinking this is primary, this is secondary, you can fixate on the primary and say, oh, this is the basis of everything. Now what the statement is saying is, no, mental events can in turn give rise to mind. So then they are equally interdependent. It's not just this is dependent on this, whereas this is not dependent on this. That's good. Yeah. Do the rest of you get this? That one lesson from this statement is to say, when we talk about dependent, interdependent, or dependent arising, it's not just that mental factors rely on mind, since mind is sometimes called basic, and mental factors are derivatives. But to be able to see how mental factors in turn give rise to mind. So then, neither of the two have essence.
Each influences the other and gives rise to a different aspect, or, I mean, the screen with the images is not so relevant in fact, because the screen doesn't change. Typically, I mean, if you're looking at a movie screen, it gets there with, but mind can evolve.
Yes.
As a result of analysis.
Yes, it changes
It changes.
Yes.
Or else, what are we doing?
Yeah. So that we would even say, yes, that analogy breaks down very quick. I mean, all analogies have limits, but the analogy of the mind as the screen and the images on the screen, while telling us something, we should not go any further with the analogy because it breaks down if you start thinking that the screen is permanent.
And also
then
this
the mind is permanent.
Hi, I wanted to just comment, even today, when we say he had a change of mind or she had a change of mind, and it's usually because of mental events, and we see somebody change their the paradigm.
Yeah. We wish more people will change their mental paradigm soon. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, this is helpful. Thank you. That mind and mental events are both directions dependent, not just one direction dependent.
It's also very interesting. There's an interplay that the secondary event can affect the mind.
Yes.
But it's also quite not puzzling, but it gives food for thought that the intention to do it, the intention to like saying, I must become ordained or developing any other intention, we don't know where it comes from. It just arises. So the interplay, there's interplay between the secondary events and the mind.
The primary, right.
The primary. And where these things come from, we don't know.
So here it will say, if you look closer, then even the primary is not primary as in, came from nowhere. The primary came from previous secondaries. So we won't go to the next statement, but the next statement is a really interesting one. I will just leave you at reading that statement. People claim that it is only the mind that transmigrates in samsara. Very standard, It's the mind that is reborn, or the continuity of mind that is reborn, right? You're like, yeah, isn't that what we say, Here, instead, Kyoba Rinpoche says, it is the body that transmigrates in samsara. What? So immediately you think, wait, you mean like there's the continuity of the body, even if we don't say there is a, permanent body going from place to place, having all these experiences? You mean it's the continuity of the body and not the continuity of the mind that goes from being a cat, to a king, to a caterpillar? It seems like this Vajra statement is saying that is the body and not the mind. Yeah. It's like, that's really puzzling, right? That's really like, all Buddhists, if you read that, you'll be like, wait. The commentary is going to provide a pretty, I think, logical kind of quotations. My feeling, I maybe again, I've not looked at it enough, but my feeling when I've looked at the commentary and also the notes is that they're using quotes and logical and certain way of reasoning to almost like I feel like justify the Vajra statement. Yeah. But there is an experiential element to the truth of the Vajra statement that is, to me, very powerful. And I'll share with you, when we look at this on Monday. Which, by the way, the real title of the retreat coming up in Little Rock, Arkansas, next weekend. The real title is not a mindfulness of body retreat. The real title is this statement, actually. In samsara is the body that wanders. For transmigrate, I don't like transmigration, although literally it's correct. But wander, in the same way now, more and more, I don't like migrators or migratory beings. The real sense of drowa is it's wandering, like aimlessly wandering, aimlessly and helplessly wandering around, which is samsaric beings. So in samsara is the body that wanders. So this statement to me has a lot to very profound in terms of our understanding of the relationship between body and mind, and how awareness, mindfulness of body is one powerful method for us to understand more about the mind. In the end, of course, it's not the body by itself, right? A corpse, the whole body is still there. It does nothing. A corpse, unless, you die because somebody, shot you or chop you up. But, even without that, you're dead. The whole body is still there, it's not doing anything. But this provocative statement that in samsara is the body that wanders, it has real profound kind of implications. And so on Monday, we'll look at this statement. One of my favorite statements. Many, many years ago, when I first heard this statement, I thought, oh, come on. And then when finally some earlier translations of the commentary, I look at it, I said, you're just like making an excuse for this statement by finding, quotations to sort of cleverly explain it away. See, there are like commentaries, right, that really explain the statement. And then there are commentaries that you feel, this is just making an excuse for a statement that you don't know what to do with. And then you need to find something to defend your founder. And you succeeded in making excuses for it. But making excuses for it and really illuminating the statement, those are two things, So anyway, don't misunderstand, I'm not like saying, I get it, I know a lot of places I don't get it, but I'm very, hopefully, I'm forward about that. It's like, I don't get this. But there's something, hiding behind, kind of like, I sort of see there's some connections there. And then sometimes with the commentary, I feel, you're just making excuse. But at some point, this particular line, in samsara is the body that wanders. And it's like, oh, yeah, Like on the level of experience, you're like, that is a true statement. Is it factual? Maybe, maybe not. Let's see. Is it true? I dare say I have experienced the truth of this statement. I'm not talking about, oh, I've seen past lives, future. No. I don't have those kinds of experiences. But more in this life, in the context of even just the last few years, I see the truth of this statement. In samsara is the body that wanders. Anyway, we shall end here today. I didn't want to clog up the WhatsApp